Focus remained focus. Galvanization still saves the body from rapid decay. In the oldest specimens, you need to keep an eye on the state of the hidden cavities of doors and thresholds, but the gloss is lost as quickly as before. The paint is not only easily scratched and cloudy from washes, but also peels off, like skin after sunburn. The front bumper, the edge of the hood shed noticeably, but most of all the thresholds. It would be useful to protect these parts with an anti-gravel coating or a film. The lining on the trunk lid also remained a problem. Corrosion under it appears the fastest, especially in Spanish-assembled cars, and license plate light contacts can oxidize after the second winter. There is little joy from the branded unlocking of the hood with the lock key behind the emblem on the radiator grille. It's not just about the dirt on your hands. The plastic rod leading from the lock cylinder to the hood latch often breaks. The lock costs €70, but the craftsman adapted with minimal locksmith intervention to install a similar, but made of metal, part from Mondeo. And for sedans, the trunk also ceases to open over time. The unsuccessfully laid wiring harness for the electric lock is broken. In the second focuses, not only the bulbs in the headlights burn out. To replace them, the headlights are supposed to be dismantled. The same fate befalls the heating filaments of the exterior mirrors. Sometimes the heating of the front seats fails, and the heater itself often requires attention. In cars with climate control, the temperature sensor in the cabin may fail. But more often, the heater fan motor, €240, causes problems. After 50,000 kilometers, its resistor may burn out, and if the change in speed begins to be accompanied by a squeal, then lubricating the shaft bearings is a Sisyphean job. They are worn out. However, the reason for the ice age in the cabin can also be hidden under the hood. For gasoline Duratex 1.8 and 2.0, the thermostat often fails before 100,000 kilometers. It is absolutely the same and costs €25. At the same time, during the restyling of 2008, the alternator drive belt tensioner disappeared from the same engines. If after 25 to 30,000 kilometers the belt starts to slip, when replacing the belt and roller, it is better to return the old-style tensioner. The generators themselves for all engines are quite reliable and rarely require attention before 150,000 kilometers. But even if the generator fails, you should not rush to replace it. As a rule, it is enough to renew worn brushes. Just do not drive with the generator off until the battery is completely discharged. After that, it will be possible to wake up the sleep engine control unit only with the help of proprietary equipment. And with the ECU, more precisely, with its firmware, you won't get enough trouble without it. More than others, Duratec 1.8 sins with their flaw. With different versions of software, it either pulled badly until it warmed up, then arranged an idle dance, then twitched when driving in tension and started poorly. It is important not to get confused here. In a similar way, the throttle body, ignition coils and wires are harmful to Duratec 1.8 and 2.0 engines. All the sources of Zetec engines of the first Focus are available. The throttle block is still powerless against pollution, and if flushing it every 40 to 50,000 kilometers stops saving, replacing the throttle position sensor can help. And for these same motors, you need to closely inspect candle wells. If, after 80 to 100,000 kilometers, deposits of oil were found in them, it is necessary to change the valve cover gasket, but sometimes it is enough to simply tighten the cover, the tightening of which has weakened due to vibrations. And just by this time they can intensify. The upper hydraulic engine mount gets tired. For 2-liter units, a 100,000-mile run can also be critical for a 2-mass flywheel, whose rattling request for replacement is better not to be ignored. Eliminating the consequences of spring bailouts will cost more. And if after 300 RPM traction starts to disappear and the check engine indicator flashes, get ready to replace the intake manifold flap control valve. What is reliable for engines 1.8 and 2.0 is a timing drive with a chain that rarely requires attention before 200 to 250,000 kilometers. But still, it's better to put up with the periodic replacement of the timing belt every 80,000 kilometers for old 1.4 and 1.6 engines. They migrated from the previous Focus and cause fewer problems. In the 115 horsepower version 1.6 TVCT, twin independent variable camshaft timing, that appeared on the second Focus with a mechanism for changing the valve timing at the inlet and outlet. This same mechanism moves. The camshaft couplings were not particularly reliable until 2007. All gasoline Focuses also have common ailments. For example, a capricious gas pump was inherited from the previous generation. which is extremely sensitive to the purity of the fuel. If the small mesh in it is clogged, the car may not start. Officially, the mesh costs €300 because it changes only when assembled with the fuel pump, and the inevitable removal of the fuel tank increases the cost by another €150. It is no wonder that the craftsman picked up a suitable penny mesh and changed it separately. Another problem is the not very tenacious converters located close to the exhaust manifold. They can be destroyed not only by an excess of unburned fuel during misfires, but also by oil that has entered the outlet due to worn or coke piston rings when its consumption exceeds 1.5 liters per 10,000 kilometers. And the rings lie not only when saving on oil. By the way, with a mileage of more than 100,000 kilometers, the oil change interval is 20,000 kilometers for cars before 2011 and 15,000 kilometers after 2012. It is better to reduce to 10,000 kilometers. Overheating is often to blame, which can occur if the sandwich of radiators is not cleaned once every 1 or 2 years. The nuance is also that you may not know about the boiling under the hood. The coolant temperature gauge is not particularly accurate. Diesel Focuses are rare in our country, only 4%, although cars with the Duratorq 1.8 engine were even produced in Sevolosk. But in vain. The main thing is not to refuel from the same barrel with tractors. Then you won't have to restore the injection pump after 100,000 kilometers, from €500 for repairs and €1,000 for a new pump, or change worn-out nozzles. In order to avoid buying an EGR valve at the same mileage, it must be periodically cleaned of inevitable deposits, and the questions for the dual-mass flywheel are the same, as is the case with the 2.0 petrol engine. Quite reliable and unpretentious automatic transmission for F27E. She is not too quick and not young. The roots go back to the Ford Escort subcompact, but the problems of weak rear thrust cover and friction clutches were solved at the previous Focuses and Mazdas of the 3rd and 6th series, where this box was called FN4AEL. Troubles happen only through the fault of the control system, the valve body, which, moreover, often needs to be restored for half the amount, pressure sensors or pressure regulator solenoids. A rare case, but from the mechanics of the Focus you can expect a dirty trick almost more often than from the machine. The 5-speed IB5 series paired with the Durateq 1.8 engine was especially distinguished. When working with a heavy load after 70 to 80,000 kilometers, the axis of the satellites in the differential may break, followed by a hole in the crankcase and all the consequences, not only oil, but also finances in the amount of €2,500. The same amount may be needed if, after 100,000 kilometers, the hull of the input shaft bearing is ignored, it may jam. It is no wonder that instead of buying an IB5, owners usually implant the 5-step MTX75 from 2-liter cars. It is stronger and transplanted without big problems. But you need to monitor the condition of the seals in both boxes, and especially carefully, for the seal of the gearshift rod. He often snots, and even a minimal lack of gear oil quickly finishes the shafts and gear rims. The release bearing does not differ in good health either. It costs €65 in a single block with the clutch slave cylinder. It may require the removal of the box after 50 to 60,000 kilometers. When replacing a bearing, it is worthwhile to take a closer look at the state of the clutch itself, €290, because there is no smoke without fire, although for thrifty drivers, the clutch happens to withstand 120 to 130,000 kilometers each. The cable shift mechanism for both transmissions almost does not break, and if the gears suddenly start to fly out, all repairs usually come down to tightening the cables. In suspension, no surprises, in the sense that its mileage remained, like that of the previous Focus, mediocre. In the McPherson front suspension, the wheel bearings are still rather weak, which you have to change together with the hub for €130, often giving up simultaneously with the stabilizer struts, €26 each, after 50 to 60,000 kilometers. The support bearings of the struts are enough for 60 to 80,000 kilometers, and the levers, €150 together with silent blocks and ball bearings, sometimes wear out after 100,000 kilometers. The rear multi-link is more reliable. A bulkhead is rarely required before 120,000 kilometers, but a complete revision will cost at least €520. Almost all silent blocks change only with levers. Therefore, many unofficial stations offer to save money, at your own peril and risk, repress non-original silent blocks. A familiar picture in the steering, traction, €65, has to be updated after 50 to 60,000 kilometers, tapping rack, and pinion mechanisms also often changed under warranty. At the electric booster, the pump control board sometimes burns out. And if the traditional hydraulic booster, for cars with engines 1.4 and 1.6, suddenly fails in winter, do not immediately rush to the store for a new pump. It is simply sensitive to extreme cold and the bypass valves could freeze due to condensate accumulated in the oil. Just wait until the car warms up. And to prevent this from happening, the oil in the power steering system should be changed every 40 to 50,000 kilometers. Only you need to choose it strictly according to the VIN code. Ford uses both mineral water and synthetics, otherwise you will have to buy also rake. It turns out that having changed the generation, the second Ford Focus did not become more reliable than its predecessor. But it didn't get any worse. And, no less important, it has not lost its main advantage, accessibility both for purchase and for maintenance. It is illogical to take cars from the first batches. Focus I of the last year of production is no worse, but cheaper by 40 to 90,000 rubles. But against the background of peers, the Focus 2 is very attractive. Another 20 to 30,000 rubles more affordable are the French Renault Megane 2 or Peugeot 307, but they are also more capricious, and the Chevrolet Lacetti and the new one were cheaper than the Focus. Well, the Japanese are much more expensive. Even for the platform Mazda 3 they ask for 30 to 60,000 rubles more, and for the Toyota Corolla you will have to add even more to the price of the Focus, 40 to 80,000 rubles.